here we go. Excellent. All right, so this is lecture 9, the first of the new set of lectures for exam 2. And really what we're going to cover is there's 5 lectures where we're going to go over teleost fishes. And so this is the most derived fishes that we'll be talking about. And so there's a lot of diversity here. Most of the fishes are in fact teleosts. So 5 lectures are dedicated to the diversity of teleosts. And then we're going to move into systems, which is going to be physiology, biology, how do fish work. So this will be the first of the last 5 taxonomy lectures of teleost fishes. So the first one we're going to talk about here is series Atheronomorpha. So we left off last time, let me get my pointer here. We left off last time talking about the mullets, family Mugillidae. And now we're here into series Atheronomorpha. And there's a couple key features here. And again, I said pay attention to fin placement, hard spines in the dorsal fin and anal fin, and also then modifications to the jaws. And so this is one of our first major modifications to the jaws. These fish are mostly epipelagic, meaning that they live near the surface, out in the open water. And they are surface feeders. They have these unique jaw mechanisms, the protrusion mechanisms. So they have either a beak or an upturned mouth. And so we see the premaxilla sort of here take on a slightly different shape. And again, it's a specialization for feeding. Also, 75% of these fish are freshwater or brackish water. The only known unisexual species of fishes are in this series. So there are 2 families where there are no males. The entire species is comprised of females. There are no males. 3 orders, 21 families, about 1,300 species here in series Atheronomorpha. And again, this premaxilla is protruded and specialized to form either a beak or an upturned mouth to aid in prey capture. And again, a lot of these things are feeding at the surface. So this beak sort of helps with that lifestyle. So when we look here, our first family, Atherinidae. Atheriniformes, Atherinidae. These are the silversides. An example here is the brook silverside. They're called silversides because they have a silver stripe down their side. And again, note the mouth here, that upturned or beak-like mouth, very characteristic of these fishes. 2 distinct dorsal fins. And when we mean distinct, we mean they're oftentimes quite separated. So here is your anterior dorsal fin, there's your posterior dorsal fin. Lateral line is weakly developed or absent. So these things may or may not have a lateral line down the side of the body. Sometimes they don't, other times they do, but it's a smaller or abbreviated. There are 8 families, 285 species. In family Atherinidae, again, 2 widely separated dorsal fins. And as usual, this anterior dorsal fin is the one that has spines. The posterior dorsal fin is soft rays. And this is sort of the theme here. We talk about acanthopterygian fishes. Pectoral fins are high on the body. You can sort of see here, they're almost above the midline of the body. And so the pectoral fins are what we say high up on the body, closer here to the shoulder or the top of the head. Lateral line absent in family Atherinidae. Silver stripe on body, key feature. Small mouth that is terminal at the end of the head. Important forage fishes. These are a lot of times consumed by other larger prey or a lot larger predators out there. 165 species total. 1 species is unisexual. Again, all females. There are no males. And almost all the fish in this family, they broadcast spawn floating eggs. So pelagic is floating, meaning that fertilization is external. The gametes are released, and then fertilization occurs outside of the body. Max length is about 2 feet. Diet, plankton, and also some insects. Again, these things are feeding a lot of times at the surface. So they like to feed on insects that fall into water or, again, plankton that might be at the surface. Families worldwide, tropical, temperate, marine distribution. There are some freshwater species as well. A couple examples here: the Whack-A-Mole silverside, Minidia extensa, is endemic to Lake Whack-A-Mole here in southern part of the state. It's on the federal threatened species list. So these things are considered threatened as far as the Endangered Species Act. Also Pacific grunions, Laertes tennis. These are adapted to spawn high on beaches. And actually, this is the only fish that spawns on land. These things actually come out of the water and wriggle around on the beach, and then they lay their eggs in the sand outside of the water. Male and females ride waves onto the beach during high tides. 5 to 6 males then wrap around a female, deposit sperm as she lays eggs in the sand, and then they sort of dig a hole there with their tails. The eggs remain buried in the sand until the next high tide when they hatch. So kind of a unique spawning strategy there. So I got a video here talking about the grunion and spawning. So here's a video showing these grunions.
California beaches are populated with people seeking fun in the sun. But at night, just shortly after a full moon, when most of the people are away, these beaches are populated with small fish coming to frolic, but in a different way. The fish is the California grunion, and they come to the beach to spawn. Every spring and summer, they flock to Pacific beaches, mostly from Punta Abreojos, Mexico, to Santa Barbara, California.
The grunion are kind of our poster children for the beach ecosystem. They're an animal that everybody knows about, at least here in California, and they're an animal that people really like because here's an animal that kind of does what we do. It goes to the beach to have a good time, just like we do.
Someone seeing this scene might think it's a mass stranding, but National Geographic grantee and Pepperdine University biologist Karen Martin says it's all according to plan.
It's a very interesting fish from a biological standpoint. It has some really unique features. The fact that it comes fully out of the water to spawn on the beach is really unusual. There's other fish that spawn on beaches, but none to the complete extent that the grunion do.
The female begins the process by digging into the sand to deposit her eggs. The male wraps himself around the female and, bodies entwined, fertilizes the eggs. After spawning, most of the adult fish make it back into the ocean, leaving the eggs to develop and hatch within about 2 weeks. The entire cycle is based on the tides, which are affected by the phases of the moon. Grunions make their runs when the tides are highest, at night, and during new or full moons. The lower tides that follow for the next several days allow the eggs to develop, and the sand protects them. And at high tide, about 9 days after spawning, the embryos are washed free before hatching. The small grunion is near the bottom of the food chain. Far less than 1% will survive from egg to adulthood. But humans pose the greatest threat. Human population of the spawning seacoast has increased 700% since the 1920s, when the first regulations to protect the fish were created. Catching grunion is legal during certain times of the year, but no gear or net is allowed. Only bare hands can be used. But a large group of hunters can disrupt or even stop a run, and nearly every fish that arrives may be caught. And beach preservation projects such as using bulldozers and large rakes to groom the sand can be deadly to grunion nests.
There was concern that our beach grooming practices were harming the grunion eggs incubating beneath the surface of the sand. We can successfully avoid where the eggs are and continue to do what we need to do on the beach to keep the trash off of it.
Beach construction, such as shoreline armoring, which is placing rocks or cement walls to protect properties, can diminish or even eliminate grunion spawning grounds. Concern for the grunion has prompted hundreds of volunteers across California to become part of the Grunion Greeters Citizen Science Project.
No one person and no one lab group can go and see all the runs on all the different places. The only way to do it is to have a whole bunch of people, each going to their own place along the shore and watching for the grunion. I am amazed that people will give up their nights and especially when they have to get up in the morning and go back to work. Most of them will say, you know, I really enjoy doing it. I really love seeing the grunion come out. I really love the idea that I can be someplace where nobody else is around, someplace where nobody else is around me, and I'm seeing something nobody else is seeing, and there's people who care.
And so those are the grunions. Very interesting group of fish. All right. So the next order here we're going to talk about, again in series Atheronomorpha, order Beloniformes. There are 4 families, 191 species, about 51 species in freshwater, so about 25%. Order with the lower caudal lobe is usually more elongated with more rays than the upper lobe. And so it's got kind of a heterocercal tail in the sense that the lower lobe is longer. They have a fixed or non-protrusible upper jaw. And so again, a modification to the jaws. In this case, it's not protrusible, it's fixed. Eggs have these filaments on them. They're kind of like these long projections on the eggs. And then when they're laid, they then can sort of bunch together or tangle with one another, and then also attach to submerged weeds or floating weed beds. The lateral line is usually low, ventral on the body. So low ventral on the body. So here is the next group, Beloniformes. The family we'll be looking at here, the first one is family Belonidae, which is the needlefish. Family Belonidae, again, Beloniformes, Belonidae is the family. Elongated body, so a very long, kind of thin or narrow body. Both jaws are elongated to form a beak with numerous needle-like teeth. And so in this regard, they do kind of resemble a gar. They got this beak with all these teeth in it. They're capable of launching out of the water, and then they can skip along the surface like a javelin. And so these things do leap out of the water. The larvae hatch actually with normal sized jaws. They don't have these elongated jaws. This is sort of an adaptation that occurs later in life. So they hatch with these normal jaws, and then what happens is then the lower jaw begins to elongate. And then the upper jaw begins to elongate. And so this is called heterochrony. So meaning that the timing or the rate of development of one characteristic during ontogeny is shifted, and that it doesn't occur simultaneous. So both the upper and lower jaws do not grow at the same time. The lower jaw grows out first, and then the upper jaw grows out. So that's called heterochrony. It's an interesting developmental feature. It also potentially leads to new speciation events. 32 species in family Belonidae, broadcast spawners. They actually spawn eggs that sink, and then it sticks to plants on the bottom. Max size 5 feet long. Again, these things are pretty narrow, so only about 10 pounds, and that's the houndfish. Again, just with the needle-like teeth here, these are piscivores. They eat other small fish. So worldwide marine and freshwater distribution, tropic and temperate zones. So here's a video of needlefish madness. And so you can sort of see what these needlefish are up to. So the needlefish, you can sort of see how they use those beaks with the sharp needle-like teeth to capture prey. And so they sort of trap it there between the upper and lower jaw in these needles. That's how they forage. One of my favorite families, next one here, family Exocetidae. Exocetidae, the flying fishes and also the half-beaks. The flying fishes, again, we look at this, you know, again, a characteristic is the lower lobe of the caudal fin is longer than the upper lobe. It's sort of a key characteristic. And so even in the half-beak here, you can sort of see that lower lobe of the caudal fin is elongated. Same then here with the flying fish. Lower lobe of the caudal fin is elongated compared to the upper lobe. And they use this to taxi before taking off out of the water and flying. So a flying fish, for instance, can glide at up to 45 miles an hour at altitudes of 26 feet above the surface of the water, and they can fly for as far as a quarter of a mile. So these things actually can get pretty high up, and they can actually fly for quite some distance. The pectoral fins are cambered and curved, just like an airplane wing or a bird wing. So these things literally fly. And the gliding is it's an escape mechanism for predators. So if predators are preying on these things, they can sense that, and then they leap out of the water and fly away. If they can't outswim something, they just literally leave the water and fly away. So these flying fish are mostly planktivores. So they're eating plankton, filter feeding. The half-beaks have this lower elongated jaw that's flattened into a blade or a funnel. And it's used for then skimming stuff that's floating on the surface, whether that's seaweed or zooplankton, in some cases small fishes. And so when we talk about the heterochrony, like here, when we say that the lower jaw elongated first and then the upper jaw catches up, this would be like what a needlefish would look like before that longer upper jaw elongates. So the lower jaw is full of needles. In this case, the half-beak, this is a funnel that's designed to skim off the surface. And so family Exocetidae, about 137 species total, max length about 18 inches. Most are egg broadcast spawners. So again, fertilization external, outside of the body, they release their gametes into the water. Worldwide marine tropical temperate sea distribution. Not a whole lot of freshwater stuff here, mostly tropical seas or temperate seas. 24 species of half-beaks are freshwater in the Indo-Australian region, and most of these are viviparous. So the flying fishes are marine, the half-beaks can be freshwater. And we say viviparous, meaning live bearers, so they have a modified anal fin into an andropodium, which allows then for internal fertilization inside of the female. So we do have what are called two-winged and four-winged flying fishes. The two-winged flying fishes means that only the pectoral fins are modified into wings, whereas in the four-winged flying fishes, both the pectoral fins and the pelvic fins are modified for flight. So a little bit of a slight difference there. So you can have both, you can have two fins or all four. So here is a video showing them the flying fishes. They're quite spectacular, actually, when they're flying. And so here is a little video showing this.
The underwater world is a dangerous place, whether it's a river, a lake, or an ocean. Most dangerous of all is the open sea, because when predators strike here, there is nowhere to hide. For most fish, that is. Free of the water, flying fish soar on long fins adapted for airborne escape. But escaping predators is only half the battle. They also have to make sure there's a next generation. These flying fish are searching for something that will make this possible. A bit of flotsam. They're in luck. A palm frond. Perfect. A tiny raft adrift in a huge ocean. And, like a raft, it offers sanctuary, not for the flying fish, but for their eggs. The first females to arrive lay their eggs on the raft. Then the males swim by and release their sperm. Soon, thousands join in. Countless strands of eggs are laid and fertilized.
Open your eyes to the wonder of life. Sundays at 8. Only on
All right. So those are the flying fish of family Exothetidae. Very interesting group. And again, the half-beaks are also related here. Now we're going to move into order Cyprinodontiformes. This is a major group of freshwater fish. In some cases, they can tolerate some salinity like estuaries, but mostly freshwater. They also can tolerate some very wide environmental conditions. The example here, mosquito fish Gambusia affinis can tolerate some pretty terrible water quality, low dissolved oxygen, things like that. So they're very hardy in some cases. The lateral line is mainly on the heads. They've got a very good lateral line system on their head. Very complicated, so they can definitely sense a lot of stuff around their head region. Oftentimes, they're highly developed, sexually dimorphic fishes, and the males are very brightly colored. So for instance, here is a red-tailed split fin, Xenotoca isoni. This is a male, and so like these brilliant reds and blues and yellows. The females are like a drab kind of tan or gray color. So the females are more cryptically colored, whereas the males are often bright. And so a lot of times you'll find these in the aquarium trade. The Xenotoca, for instance, is endangered, so it's not, but lots of other members are in the aquarium trade. Most of these are live bearers. Some are capable of extended embryonic development of years. So for instance, if the fish is impregnated and is stressed out, it can actually hold the embryos in a state of suspended animation, and then they'll finish developing later on. So a lot of these guys are viviparous with live bearing. So order Cyprinodontiformes generally. The first family we'll talk about here is Fungulidae, the top minnows and the killifiches. So you find these things on the East Coast of North Carolina: Fungulus enteroclitus, the mummichog. The mummichogs, again, is another example of one it's freshwater, but it can tolerate estuaries, so it does tolerate some salt. Family has a flattened head, and back in the predorsal area. Again, euryhaline, so it can tolerate saltwater and freshwater. 40 species. These things lay eggs in sediments or on plants. And similar to the grunion, the grunions physically climb out of the water onto the sand. Mummichogs oftentimes will lay their eggs in tide pools during high tide, and then during low tide, those eggs are sort of exposed to the air a little bit. And they're laid on stones, sediments, or plants on the shoreline. Max length about 7 inches. diet, aquatic insects, crustaceans, worms, algae. They're kind of opportunistic omnivores. Family is mostly freshwater, again, estuarying along the coastal marine habitats. Also lowlands, like some swamps and things like that, or the intercoastal waterway of North and Middle America. So family Fungulidae. And so there's some killifishes, top minnows, and then the mummichogs. So Fungulidae. The next order of fish, or the next family of fishes we'll talk about, these are the anablepids. All right. Anablepids are four-eyed fishes. Now, they don't really have exactly four eyes. They've got really just like two very large eyes that are subdivided. And so functionally, they operate like four eyes, but it's only one eye, or eye on each side of the head. So the eyes are dorsal. They're on the top of the head like this. And they are divided then into an upper and lower portion. They have an upper eye and a lower eye. And these things live like this. They sort of sit at the very surface of the water with their bulging eyes. Half of their eye is above the surface of the water, and the other half of the eye is below it. And what they do is they can see above the water and below it simultaneously. They have, the males have an anal fin that's modified into a gonopodium that it uses for internal fertilization. So these things impregnate the females. There's 3 species. Again, all of them are live bearers. Max length is about 13 inches. Their diet, small insects, mollusks, and they also scavenge on fish carcasses. Sometimes they'll eat insects and things that fall into the water at the surface. So family is in fresh and brackish waters from Mexico to northern South America. So this is really Central America down south, so kind of a warm water fish. And when we look at these anablepid eyes, again, they're sort of living at the surface there. The top of the head protrudes through the air-water interface. And these eyes then bulge out. The pupil is divided into an upper and a lower. So again, it's one eyeball on either side of the head, but really you got an upper eye and then a lower eye. And what it's designed to do is this. They can process images in the air. Like for instance, a bug is flying, they can see that. And they have a retina here that sees stuff from the air, and then they have a second retina that sees stuff from the water below them. So the eye is subdivided into 2 functional eyes. The lens is elliptical, whereas normal fish eyes are a perfect sphere. And so this allows then these 2 focal axes, one for the air, one for the water. The ventral retina then captures the aerial image, and the dorsal retina then captures the aquatic image. And this provides simultaneous vision for prey in both the air and in the water. And likewise, prey, but also predators. They can see stuff, a bird trying to eat them or a fish trying to eat them from below. So they can see both. So the 4-eyed anablepids. And so I'm going to say a key diagnostic there is pretty much eyes divided into 4 functional eyes. The 4-eyed fishes is a pretty good characteristic there, I think. So Anablepidae is the family. The next family we'll talk about here is Poecilidae, the live bearers. And males of all but one species have a gonopodium. So generally speaking, when we talk about gonopodium, here's the anal fin of a male. So you can sort of tell. This is a male, has a gonopodium. This is a female. There's no gonopodium. And the gonopodium is really this extension of that spine on the anal fin. Right? So here's a close-up of it. It's really just an elongated spine there on the anal fin. And then the male can then use that for internal fertilization on the female. Pectoral fins are high up on the body, and the pelvic fins are thoracic. All but one species is viviparous. They all have internal fertilization except that one. Max length is about 7 inches. So these can live in fresh or brackish waters in low elevations of the eastern U.S. to South America. Things like the mosquito fish, but also then like guppies. And so here you can see the tail of a guppy coming out. This is a female here. Again, no gonopodium. And this female guppy is giving birth. This is a juvenile coming out of the urogenital pore. So it's giving birth to live young. And so guppies, for instance, do this. And so this is family Posilidae. Another interesting fact about family Posilidae is here's a distribution of some of these mollies. Now, the Amazon mollies exist as only females. So Amazon mollies are here, right here along the Gulf of Mexico. Here's Corpus Christi in Texas. And what this means is there are no males. They're what we call gynogenetic. Gyno meaning woman, or gene is a female, and genesis is to create. So from the female, we can create. So these fish actually they'll mate with males of another species, and the sperm then will activate the eggs to divide. Although the sperm from the other species contributes no genetic material. It literally just stimulates the egg to divide. So if you think back to intro to biology, when they talk about things like parthenogenesis, where the egg can just give rise spontaneously to a diploid life, that's sort of what's going on here. And so there are no males among the Amazon mollies. The sperm literally just stimulate the egg to divide, and it has no genetic contribution to it. So kind of a unique strategy here. So there are species of fishes where there are no males in the entire species. Pretty interesting. So again, family Posilidae. Family Cyprinodontidae. These are the pup fishes. So these things either have this truncated or emarginated caudal fin. Here is called squared. In some cases, it can be a rounded caudal fin. Pelvic fins and supporting bones are absent in some species. So in some species, there might not be any pelvic fins. Family is noted for tolerance to extreme environmental conditions. So pup fishes, for instance, are in Lake Titicaca, way up here, up in the mountains, 15,000 foot elevation, natural highest body of water populated by fishes. There are pup fishes living in it, right? Also, about 20 species of Cyprinodon inhabit extreme deserts in the Southwest. The desert, the devil hole pup fish in Death Valley. Very intolerable conditions these things can live in. About 100 species all lay eggs that sink or are adhesive, much like family Fungulidae. Max length about 9 inches. And so here's an example of the sheep's head minnow Cyprinodon variegatus. I believe you need to know this one for the lab portion of the course. Family, fresh, estuarine, and marine waters of the New and Old World tropics and temperate zones. So a lot of times these things are tropical and freshwater. And again, very extreme habitats, high elevations, very hot water, things like that. So they're pretty hardy, if you think of it that way. So moving on to series Percomorpha. One of the key features here, we finished Etherinomorpha, now we're going to talk about some of these fishes here. And again, the main theme that we're going to be talking about now is the pelvic girdle is attached to the pectoral girdle. So remember when I was telling you that as we see more advanced fishes, these pelvic fins are migrating anterior, and they're going to be more located in close proximity to the pectoral fins. Well, here we're seeing that the pelvic and pectoral girdles are actually attached. They're associated with one another. And so this is where we're going to start seeing a lot more of that going on. So 9 orders, 230 families. There's only about 12,000 species here. So very, very high variation. So first order, we'll talk about Bariciformes. Now notice, look at the size of the eyes on all these fish. They're all very relatively large sized eyes compared to the size of the head or the body. And that's because a lot of these fishes are nocturnal. So they have larger eyes so they can see in low light conditions. There are strong spines on the head and also on the dorsal fins usually. So very kind of dangerous looking stuff like this. The maxilla is partially included in the gape of the mouth. 7 families, about 125 species, all marine. So very large eyes is a key feature here. So the first that we'll talk about are the squirrel fishes, Holocentridae. And again, look at the size of the eye here. Very large eyes as well on this example there. Holocentridae. Long, hard dorsal spines and serrations on the head. Most things don't want to try to eat this because these are all sharp, heavy, hard spines. So this is armor, this is defense. It prevents other fish from eating it. These are sharp and spiny. Usually 7 soft rays in the pelvic fins and 4 spines in the anal fin. So they've also got spines here in the anal fin. So dorsal fin has spines, anal fin has spines, and the soft rays are back here. These are kind of shallow coral reef species. You know, you see the background here. These things are swimming around the corals. Popular aquarium fishes because oftentimes there are these brilliant oranges and reds. And so they're popular for aquariums, but part of this coloration, you know, you think it's brilliantly colored at the surface. You know, when you look at how light attenuates, red is the first color that attenuates in the visible light spectrum when it's passing through water. So these things appear gray or black at depth. And so really this even though it's bright red to us, it's camouflage in the dark, deep water. So squirrelfish have a large preopercular spine, whereas soldierfish do not. That's just one characteristic between the two. 65 species, again, no parental care, releasing gametes, fertilization occurs outside of the body, and max length about 2 feet. And their diet is mostly small fish, plankton, and aquatic invertebrates. And these are tropical marine distributions. So they are marine, they are in the tropics, otherwise they're worldwide around the globe, but tropical and marine. So family Holocentridae. All species in this family, Holocentridae, also produce sounds by muscular vibrations of the swim bladder. So there's muscles around the swim bladder, the air bladder, that is providing this fish with buoyancy. And what it does is it sort of squeezes that or squeaks it. Ever grab take a balloon, right? You fill it up with air, and then you sort of rub your hands on it, and it makes like the balloon noise. Well, these things do a very similar thing to their swim bladder. They sort of make noises with it. And these can be coos, pops, grunts, quacks, flutters, squeaking door noises, squeezing balloon noises, whatever. And the function here is for intra and interspecific aggressive encounters. A lot of times these things will make these noises to scare away things or to assert dominance. And so I'm going to show you I'm going to play a couple of these sounds for you to hear what these noises are. But there's several groups of fishes that do this, make noises, but Holocentridae is one of them. So here are some squirrelfish vocalizations. So this is a website here. There's a squirrelfish, and this is like sort of the audio profile. And so let's listen to this. And they make that noise by vibrating the swim bladder, believe it or not. And so here then is a video of a yellowfin soldierfish in Hawaii, in Kona. And you'll see it down here hiding in these dark caves. And again, the brilliant colors these things have, see how they appear camouflage in the dark. So those are the squirrel fishes. Very large eyes, nocturnal mostly. So, moving on. Order gasteroformes. Gasterostiformes. Now, generally speaking, there's some odd features here. Dermal elements tend to form plates or rings. Like the case of the seahorse, these things are relatively heavily armored. The stickleback has these very long, they're called sticklebacks because they have these very prominent spines. Mouth is usually small and terminal. So here's a pipefish. You can see the mouth here. Again, the seahorse is a classic example. Here's a leafy sea dragon. This is its tail. And this is its eye. And this is its mouth right here. Again, very good camouflage on these things. Here's a hairy ghost pipefish. Very good camouflage here. And then this is the stickleback. So oftentimes a very small terminal mouth. 11 families, about 260 species. So relatively good protective armor. So when we talk about the first family here, again, Gasterostiformes, Gasterostidae is the family. Look at these spines here. You know, these are for protection. And in some cases, there's 5. Here's 3 spine stickleback. And so a series of 3 to 16 well-developed isolated dorsal spines right here. There's no fin attached here. So these things aren't really helping out with swimming as much as they're helping out with don't eat me is what those things are doing. Elongate and very narrow caudal peduncle. Look at this, very narrow caudal peduncle for a fish of this size. Large lateral bony scutes and some and plates. So sometimes they'll have plates along the side. So again, throwbacks to this kind of more armored, defensive body shape. Famous for many studies in evolution, genetics, and physiology. So the 3-spine stickleback, for instance, was the genome of the 3-spine stickleback was part of the Human Genome Program. And so it was sequenced actually alongside human in order to help annotate it. So it's very important research fish. Well known for complex reproductive behaviors. I'm going to show a video of courtship here in a minute. Eggs hatch in about 6 days, and then the fish will guard the eggs and the fry after they've hatched. About 7 species. They lay eggs on the bottom. Max length about 7 inches. Really, these things are benthic. They feed mostly on chironomid or other insect larvae. In some cases, they feed on plankton, and they naturally live in lakes, sometimes in the ocean or along the shoreline of the ocean, but a lot of times they're kind of a benthic feeder. So family marine, fresh, brackish waters of the northern hemisphere. And so this is Gasterostidae. Here is a stickleback courtship video. You can see these things here breeding. Female will go in there and lay her egg first, some kind of nest or substrate like that, and then the male will come in after and fertilize them. So that's the courtship behavior there of the sticklebacks. So here's our pointer. All right. So next family, Sygnathidae. Synathidae. This one is easy for me. I mean, look at this thing. I just remember Synathidae. It's a seahorse. It also includes the pipefishes, but these things are so unique. I mean, you can memorize these characteristics here, but it's a seahorse, right? They have a pipette-like mouth apparatus capable of rapid suction feeding. It's like a slurp gun. These things can just suck things right up in this mouth. Elongated body encased in armored plating. There's a series of bony rings on these things there, and so they're pretty heavily armored. There are no pelvic fins. They're absent entirely. And they have this brood pouch here. Now I'll tell you something. This is not a female. This is a male. The males have a brood pouch. The males become pregnant. I'll show a video of this. Caudal fin is lacking in the seahorse. They have this prehensile tail, and you can sort of see they use it to sort of curl. They hold on to aquatic vegetation with this thing. So they sort of use it as a you know, they can grab onto stuff with this prehensile tail. 215 species, about 190 of those are pipefishes. And so the pipefish really is just, looks kind of like a seahorse, but instead of it being kind of crooked like this, it's more straight. All synnathids are viviparous. So these are all live bearers, although they do it a little bit different than you might used to think. Diet is small crustaceans. So a lot of times they'll use this mouth there to eat small crustaceans or insects. Family worldwide marine, brackish. There are a few species in freshwater, mostly marine and brackish. So we look at family Synathidae. Seahorse mating, gestation, and labor. The male, right? Look at this. Here's a female, no brood pouch. Here's a male, there's a brood pouch. Here's actually the juveniles emerging from that brood pouch during birth. So the male provides oxygen and nutrients to the eggs and young through this brood pouch. There's actually a circulatory system in here, and these things are nourished then while they're stored in this brood pouch. And sometimes they have skin flaps for camouflage and seaweed, and the color can vary within a species depending on the background. So we'll talk about flounder and coloration, but these things oftentimes, depending on what their background is, they've got pretty good mimicry. They've got chromatophores here where they can actually change their color to better blend in with their surroundings, and so they're kind of cool in that regard. Oftentimes associated with aquatic vegetation. And so here I'll show a video then of seahorse mating, and then also a live birth video. Remember, the male is the one that becomes pregnant. The female actually deposits eggs in this pouch, and then the male fertilizes them in the pouch. And then those juveniles develop in there, and when they hatch out, they come out like these little tiny baby seahorses. Come right out. So here is the seahorse mating. see them using that prehensile tail there to grab onto things. It's pretty cool. So here is then now a male seahorse giving birth. So you can check this out. This thing, you can see how fast these tiny seahorses get ejected. It's kind of ridiculous. So there is the seahorse gestation. It's pretty amazing. So that is Synathidae, family Synathidae. Again, very unique. Here's the last family we'll talk about today, Allostomidae, family Allostomidae, the trumpet fishes. And notice these things have got a very similar kind of mouth to that of the seahorses. However, these are just a little bit bigger versions. These fishes are a lot bigger. They have this similar pipette slurp gun mouth, which again they're designed to suck things in really quickly. Body is compressed, elongated, and scaly. They have this fleshy barbell at the tip here, so you can see it really pretty good down here. Fleshy barbell at the tip of the mouth, mental barbell on the chin, kind of. Series of isolated dorsal spines, followed then by this soft dorsal fin, soft rayed dorsal fin down here. Caudal fin is usually rounded. Maybe you can see it a little bit here. A rounded caudal fin here. 3 species, all broadcast spawning. Unlike the seahorse, there is external fertilization. These fish release their gametes out into the wild. Fertilization occurs outside of the body. And then there is no parental care. Max length about 3.5 feet. Diet, they feed almost exclusively on small fish. Again, this mouth is designed to really inhale stuff very rapidly and suddenly. And so these things will eat smaller fishes like wrasses or other things like Atheriniformes, again, the silver sides that we talked about at the very first beginning of the lecture, and they suck them suddenly into their mouths. So family is tropical marine, in the Atlantic and also in the Pacific Ocean. So Alostomidae are the trumpet fishes. So that's the last family we'll talk about. And then I have a story. So here it is. You learned it here, AEC 441. And we'll talk about the devil's hole pupfish. So, these pupfishes are just like, they're related to the pupfishes we talked about before, Cyprinodontidae. And this case is the devil's hole pupfish, Cyprinodon diabolus. Now, this thing lives in the smallest known habitat of any vertebrate. And it's the devil's hole. It was listed as endangered 1967, and it is one of the most critically endangered species in the United States. You look at Endangered Species Act as the early 70s, and so this was really considered a special importance even before they were officially calling things endangered. There are less than 200 fish remaining on the earth. So the only known natural habitat of these blue 1-inch long pupfish is a spring basin shelf that's 93 degrees Fahrenheit in water temperature. The Devil's Hole in the Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, basically Death Valley, Nevada. So here it is. This is their habitat. This is a detached unit of Death Valley National Park, and pupfish are believed to have colonized the Devil's Hole about 60,000 years ago. So like as the glaciers were receding, these pupfish then became established there. And then of course it's gotten a lot warmer since then. So they've obviously adapted to the temperature. So Devil's Hole is small. It's an aquifer, so it sort of feeds into an underground body of water, over 400 feet deep. And so pupfish have been seen at depths of 80 feet. So this is just the stone shelf here. They can actually swim down this hole deeper. The habitat consists of this shallow submerged limestone shelf. It's 2 meters by 4 meters. So it's about 200 square foot. So like I'm gonna say the size of like a living room or a dining room, something like that. That's like the size of their entire habitat on the earth. It's very small, like your living room. So what they do is they forage here and they spawn. These things primarily eat diatoms, which are kind of phytoplankton, and the sunlight comes in here and the diatoms sort of, the plankton blooms happen here on this shelf, and then the pupfish hang around here and then eat the diatoms up at the surface. And then they also lay their eggs up here on this shelf. So this is the Devil's Hole pupfish. Again, it's pretty amazing. This is a pretty terrible conditions really for where it's at. And it's just kind of a relic left behind from the last ice age. And here's an article about the pupfish. Three men face felony charges in the killing of an endangered pupfish in Death Valley. Look at these guys, these yahoos. This guy's got a shotgun or something, and they drove this vehicle up here. So here, 3 men have been charged in a drunken rampage. I mean, it's always got to start off with drunken rampage. We're talking about Devil's Hole, Death Valley. So this drunken rampage in a protected habitat in Death Valley National Park, where a tiny endangered fish was found dead. They killed one of these things. So these guys here were identified through DNA, and they'll tell you how they got the DNA. They were charged with conspiracy to commit a crime, killing of an endangered species, and destruction of property, trespassing, destruction of habitat. So they said the intrusion was believed to have resulted in the death of at least 1 endangered pupfish, and biologists are trying to ascertain the extent of their damage. So last count as of this article, this was 2016, so like 4 years ago. There's only 115 fish left in existence. Now there's 114 because these guys killed one. So remember this, killing of an endangered species is a felony as defined by the Endangered Species Act. So I'll show this video here in a minute. So the men are accused of trespassing, spraying gunfire, tossing beer cans, and vomiting, and then getting into the Devil's Hole naked. So they have surveillance videos showing an off-road vehicle, and they confirm one of the men in the video illegally entering. And it says here, the men were shooting rabbits and had been drinking before they jumped over the fence. They entered the Devil's Hole. The men fired at least 10 shotgun rounds at a sign, the gates, the locks for the gate, and security system motion sensor. They damaged scientific monitoring equipment and then tried to remove cables in order to dismantle the security system. They left behind beer cans and vomit. Footage from an underwater pupfish camera showed a pair of feet entering the water, lifting up ground sediment. Water appears to have been disturbed. At least one man jumped into the water, swam around, left his boxer shorts floating in the water. One pupfish was dead, later found floating. The suspect stomped around. This is the sheriff's office. The suspects in the water stomped in the shelf area of the critical ecosystem before swimming around in deeper water, leaving behind a pair of dirty underwear when finished. Necropsy was performed on the poor fish. It had died. It had died about 24 to 48 hours earlier, meaning it died during the time of the visit. They have no known natural predators. And so they're looking for a reward here. And again, this is a felony offense. And it says here, we're looking forward to seeing these men brought to justice. Not only did they act stupid, but they destroyed some of the last remaining habitat for one of the rarest fish in the United States. So here's a video showing these guys here in Death Valley. You can see the timestamp on it. And here they come rolling up the road. So there you have it. Devil's Hole pupfish. You can see in the underwater video camera that the water there is not that deep. It's only, a few inches deep. So it goes to show you, don't go tromping around killing endangered species, please. So that is this lecture here. I'm going to stop recording, and then I will entertain questions and also any questions about the exam. So let me stop recording here.